Welcome to my channel. It was the dawn of a new decade, 1980. A year that would see monumental shifts around the globe, but amid the turmoil, the innovations, and the economic adjustments, something quiet, something subtle, was rolling off the presses at the United States Mint. Millions of them, in fact. Tiny silver-colored discs barely the size of a thumbnail, each marked with a simple inscription, 1 dime. But for coin collectors, 1 dime in particular from that year, the one stamped with a P from Philadelphia, would rise above the rest. What began as an ordinary coin soon became the stuff of legend. Coins often fly under the radar of history. They pass through our hands daily, jingling in pockets, forgotten in drawers, tossed into fountains, and slid across counters. But every coin carries a story, and sometimes, one coin carries many. That's the case with the 1980 Roosevelt dime. Not just a small piece of currency, but a symbol of a minting shift, a subtle design evolution, and for a lucky few, an astonishing payday. To understand the value of this unassuming 10-cent piece, we first need to travel back, way back, into the history of American coinage, and more specifically, the Roosevelt dime series. Introduced in 1946 to honor the memory of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the design replaced the Mercury dime and featured a left-facing bust of FDR on the obverse. The choice was significant. Roosevelt had led the nation through the Great Depression and World War II, and his death in 1945 left the country in mourning. The dime was chosen for his memorial in part because of his association with the March of Dimes, a campaign to combat polio, a disease Roosevelt himself had struggled with. Designed by John R. Sinnock, chief engraver of the U.S. Mint, the coin's face bore Roosevelt's likeness, while the reverse displayed a torch symbolizing liberty, flanked by olive and oak branches, representing peace and strength. A simple, elegant design that would remain mostly unchanged for decades. By 1980, the Roosevelt dime was a staple of everyday American life. And yet, something historic was happening that year, something subtle. For the very first time, the Philadelphia Mint added its own mint mark, a small P, just above the date on the coin's obverse. Before 1980, Philadelphia's coins were unmarked. Mint marks were reserved for other branches like Denver, D, San Francisco, S, and in earlier years, New Orleans or Carson City. So the 1980 dime marked a shift in tradition. A seemingly minor detail that would turn into something major for collectors in the decades to come. As millions of these coins rolled out of the Philadelphia Mint, 735,170,000 to be exact, most were destined for ordinary circulation. But a few slipped through the cracks of quality control with subtle differences, slight misalignments, or remarkable precision that made them stand out. These outliers are the heart of the 1980 dime legend. You see, in the world of numismatics, the study and collection of coins, details matter. Tiny details. Whether it's the way the bands on the torch are struck, the thickness of a letter, or the clarity of Roosevelt's profile, perfection and rarity drive value. Among the most coveted features on any Roosevelt dime are what collectors call full bands. On the reverse of the coin, the vertical torch is bound by horizontal bands. When those bands are struck sharply and fully visible, it indicates a high-quality strike, and coins with this feature, particularly from earlier years or less consistent mints, are worth significantly more. In 1980, full bands from the Philadelphia Mint were rare. Even rarer were those that also maintained gem-uncirculated conditions, grades of MS-65 and above. These coins, pristine in every detail, fetched hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But the crown jewel? A 1980 Roosevelt dime that went far beyond mint state grading. A dime with not only full bands, but perhaps a unique mint error, a flawless surface, and a story to match. That dime sold for a jaw-dropping $156,000, making headlines in numismatic circles around the globe. How could a 10-cent piece, one that might sit in a handful of pocket change, be worth over $100,000? The answer lies in scarcity, demand, condition, and the thrill of discovery. Coin collecting isn't just about money, it's about the chase. The dream that maybe, just maybe, tucked in an old drawer or coin jar, there's a tiny treasure waiting to be uncovered, and so, collectors began to look closer. They checked their change more carefully. They scrutinized every 1980 dime under magnifying glasses, hoping to spot full bands, or double dies, or off-center strikes. Some were lucky. Some found errors like dimes struck on copper cores, or with off-metal planchettes, or misaligned dies that created ghost images or blank areas. Each one told its own story. And each one added fuel to the legend of the 1980p. But the story doesn't end with rarity or error. There's also the element of preservation. Most coins from 1980 were used and abused, dinged, scratched, and worn through everyday handling. Only a handful were kept pristine from the moment they left the mint. These, stored carefully in protective holders, avoided the fate of circulation and became time capsules, nearly perfect windows into minting history. As the years passed, their rarity only increased. The number of uncirculated dimes dwindled. The number of MS-67 or MS-68 full-band coins became vanishingly small, and that's where value is born. In scarcity. In story. In the subtle beauty of something common made rare. Today, the 1980p Roosevelt dime is more than a coin. It's a symbol of hidden value. Of overlooked treasures. Of the idea that even in the most ordinary objects, there can be extraordinary worth. And for the lucky collector who once stumbled across a pristine, perfect specimen, and sold it for $156,000, it was a reminder that sometimes, the smallest things hold the biggest surprises. So next time you find yourself holding a dime, pause. Look a little closer. Check the date. Look for the P, look at the torch. You never know, history might just be in your hand. In 1983, as the United States stood poised between the lingering shadows of a turbulent past and the glowing dawn of a new technological age, the quiet chime of coins in pockets told stories often overlooked. Amidst that metallic chorus, a small and seemingly insignificant coin was born, one that would, over time, command the attention of collectors, historians, and dreamers alike. It was the 1983 D1 dime coin, struck in the Denver Mint with neither grandeur nor ceremony, yet destined for a story that would ripple across decades. To the casual observer, it was just another Roosevelt dime, a tiny, everyday piece of change that passed through the fingers of millions. Yet beneath its copper-nickel surface, wrapped within the whisper of its reeded edge, lay a narrative that would one day shimmer with extraordinary value. Every coin minted in that year carried more than metal, it carried the identity of a nation undergoing transformation, etched into its very design. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile, dignified and determined, faced left on the obverse. His image had been a staple on the dime since 1946, a tribute to his relentless fight against polio and his leadership during one of the nation's darkest chapters. On this 1983 Denver dime, his gaze seemed especially stoic, as if it had witnessed the changing tides of American spirit firsthand. Surrounding his image were the familiar inscriptions: Liberty, to the left, the nation's quiet oath of freedom, In God We Trust, delicately placed just beneath his chin, and the date, 1983, anchoring the coin in a specific moment in time. Just beside the date, a tiny D indicated its birth in the Denver Mint, a letter that would one day be the source of great excitement among collectors. The reverse of the coin offered a contrast of elegance and symbolism. A torch blazed at its center, flanked by an olive branch to the left and an oak branch to the right, representing liberty, peace, and strength. The words, United States of America, arched above like a banner of pride, while the phrase, E pluribus unum, whispered the national motto of unity from many. Beneath it all, the coin declared its value plainly: 1 dime, a statement of modesty compared to the extraordinary future that awaited some rare survivors of this minting year. The early 1980s had been a period of economic hardship followed by sudden rebound. Inflation had battered American wallets, gas prices had spiked, and unemployment had shaken households. But 1983 brought a sliver of optimism. The stock market began to recover, and confidence slowly trickled back into American hearts. It was a year of beginnings for many, and the coins that flowed into circulation carried a quiet energy of renewal. Yet among the millions of 1983 D dimes, a few emerged bearing peculiarities, subtle minting quirks, mysterious misalignments, or nearly imperceptible errors that only the trained eye could catch. Some were struck off-center, others bore die breaks, doubling, or curious texturing anomalies. These weren't defects in the eyes of numismatists, they were treasures, accidental masterpieces forged in the fast-paced heart of the Denver Mint. Their rarity, combined with their historical timestamp, transformed them into legends of the coin-collecting world. But that wasn't all that made the 1983 D dime truly special. This was also the year when the U.S. Mint did not issue any uncirculated mint sets, a fact often overlooked but critical. That meant nearly all of the dimes from 1983 entered circulation directly, subjecting them to the scuffs, nicks, and wear that would rob them of the mint state perfection collectors sought. As a result, finding a pristine, uncirculated 1983 D dime became an almost mythical quest. The absence of official mint sets from that year elevated even standard specimens to coveted status, and elevated rare high-grade versions to the realm of the elite. For a coin so small, measuring just 17.91 millimeters in diameter and weighing a mere 2.27 grams, its journey was monumental. It passed through soda machines, parking meters, and countless hands, perhaps tucked away unknowingly in wallets or piggy banks, waiting for rediscovery. Some may have been dropped on dusty sidewalks or forgotten at the bottom of drawers, each one silently carrying its date, its mint mark, and its potential legacy. The Denver Mint itself had been a powerhouse of American coinage since 1906. In 1983, its industrial heart was beating fast, striking millions of dimes with rhythmic precision. Yet even the most well-oiled machinery can make mistakes, or, in the eyes of collectors, magic. Within the whirring presses and cascading planchets, a few extraordinary coins were born, surviving not only the rigors of circulation but the passage of time, emerging decades later with stories etched into every gleam of their surface. Collectors, both novice and seasoned, understand the thrill of the hunt. The 1983 D dime has become a quiet grail for many, not just for its beauty or symbolism, but for the mystery that surrounds it. How many perfect examples remain? How many have slipped through the cracks of time, hiding in plain sight? It's a question that haunts treasure seekers across the country, inspiring late-night searches through coin jars and magnifying glass inspections of pocket change. In the hands of a numismatist, the 1983 D1 dime is more than currency. It's a relic. A key to unlocking stories of American resilience, a reminder that value isn't always measured by size, and a testament to the power of patience and passion. It bridges generations, linking the legacy of Roosevelt, the craftsmanship of mint workers, and the dreams of those who dare to look closer. And so, in this unassuming 10-cent coin, history converges with mystery. It holds a legacy born from politics, minted through precision, and shaped by the invisible hand of chance. It's a pocket-sized time capsule, echoing with stories of the past and whispering promises to those who believe in second glances. As years passed, one such 1983 D dime, nearly flawless and radiant in its preservation, stunned the numismatic world. With surfaces unmarred by circulation and details as sharp as the day it left the die, it proved that miracles do exist in the realm of coins, and its final value, a jaw-dropping $108. In 2002, America found itself standing in a moment of both remembrance and reinvention. The weight of a recent national tragedy still lingered heavy in the air, but the country, as it always had, pushed forward with resilience. Life resumed its rhythms, quiet, determined, familiar. Bills were paid, coffees were bought, newspapers were delivered, and in those everyday exchanges, coins continued to pass from hand to hand, whispering their silent stories. Among them was a tiny silver flash of metal, so unassuming, so ordinary in appearance, that most never gave it a second glance. The 2002 P1 dime coin, but what seemed ordinary to the untrained eye was, in truth, the beginning of an extraordinary story. This coin, like millions of others struck at the Philadelphia Mint that year, bore the enduring image of Franklin D. Roosevelt on its obverse. The lines of his profile, time-tested and unmistakable, stood firm, a symbol of courage and leadership in the face of adversity. Even in 2002, long after Roosevelt's passing, his legacy lived on through these dimes, each one echoing his New Deal, his fireside chats, and his unbreakable will during America's darkest hours. Liberty stretched along the left edge of the coin, bold and unwavering. In God We Trust nestled just beneath Roosevelt's strong chin, and the date, 2002, was crisp and proud beside his neckline. And there, almost subtly placed but immensely important to collectors, was the P mint mark, signifying Philadelphia. It seemed like any other dime. It was like any other dime, until it wasn't. Turn it over, and the reverse held the same classical composition Americans had known for decades, a flaming torch in the center, symbolizing liberty, to its left, an olive branch for peace, to its right, an oak branch for strength. These weren't just decorative symbols, they were pieces of national philosophy pressed into metal. Above them, United States of America, bold and commanding. Below, 1 dime, clear and to the point. And hidden between, in fine print, the motto, E pluribus unum, a reminder of unity born from diversity, but sometimes, meaning runs deeper than metal. The early 2000s were a curious time for coin collectors. Technology was reshaping minting processes, but with mass production came tiny inconsistencies. To the average citizen, those inconsistencies were invisible. But to collectors, they were golden threads woven into the tapestry of numismatic legend. Among the 2002 p dimes, something curious began to emerge. Some coins, though few in number, bore errors so rare they seemed to defy probability. Slight misalignments in the strike, die-polish lines, weak edges, or doubling in inscriptions, these quirks turned otherwise mundane dimes into subjects of intense fascination. The margins were narrow, but the outcomes astonishing. When a coin like this slipped past the eagle eyes of mint inspectors, it entered circulation as a sleeping giant, unaware of its own future importance. Philadelphia's mint was a well-oiled machine by 2002, churning out billions of coins with industrial precision. But perfection, ironically, isn't always what collectors crave. They crave the outliers. The unique. The one coin that emerged different from its siblings, not from intention, but from chance. And when such a coin is preserved in pristine condition, untouched by time or transaction, its value begins to climb in ways no one could have foreseen. Imagine, then, a single 2002 p dime, buried for decades in a forgotten drawer, never jostled in a pocket or rubbed against keys, never dropped on pavement or spun across a counter. It remains in perfect condition, its luster brilliant, its details razor sharp, its edges still proudly ridged. Such a dime doesn't just represent a moment in history, it becomes a monument to preservation itself. For collectors, this hunt isn't just about value, it's about mystery. How many like it still exist? How many have been lost, worn, or discarded, never to be appreciated for their true potential? That's what makes the 2002 p1 dime so thrilling. It's a modern coin, yes, but rarity doesn't always wait for centuries to reveal itself. Sometimes, it arrives quickly, disguised as the ordinary Roosevelt, whose face graces this humble coin, knew something about resilience and quiet power. And how poetic that a coin bearing his image, small, quiet, seemingly unremarkable, could rise through the ranks of numismatic circles to be revered not for its size or age, but for its purity, its flaw, or its impeccable condition. In a world increasingly digital and cashless, coins like this gain even greater meaning. They remind us of touch, of metal, of permanence in a time where most things disappear with a swipe. The 2002 p dime, especially one preserved in flawless condition or marked by a rare minting error, becomes a relic not just of currency, but of human intention, of something made to be passed along, but instead held onto with care. It's a marvel that such a small object, measuring less than 18 millimeters across and weighing under 3 grams, can hold within it so much curiosity, history, symbolism, and now, incredible value, because one of these dimes, just one, stood apart, flawless, radiant, struck perfectly with subtle distinctions that made experts stop, breathe, and take a second look. It defied its denomination, transcended its purpose, and stunned even the most seasoned numismatists. And today, that one humble 2002 p dime is worth a staggering $90,000.